Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Calvin Wazoo, Richard here, and it's time for another Random Pick Monday. And using the random selection option in Discogs, I was able to generate this from my collection. Solomon Burke, the Bishop of Soul, the King of Rockin' Soul. This, if you are unfamiliar with Solomon Burke, this is a good album to have in terms of your first entry into his catalog. This is a super album of a typical live performance that he would make and the way he would engage the crowd that would come to see him. Solomon Burke has a very, very colorful history. He began singing at a very young age. He became an ordained minister and continued to be one of the most influential voices in soul music during the 50s and 60s. He recorded with, I believe, Stax Records. And this particular release is a re-release on Demon Records. But he, as I said, was a very colorful storyteller. Music historians would listen to his stories and, they would sound unbelievable, but then somebody would corroborate to a large degree what Solomon Burke was saying about a particular story. If you like reading about music and music history, I highly recommend this book, Sweet Soul Music by Peter Guralnick. It's a great book, traces the history of soul music and R&B going all the way back to the days of Sam Cooke up through the 70s and into the 80s, but really covers well the prime time period of soul music in the 50s and early 60s. So Solomon, as I said, was a very colorful character. For example, he was a bit of a schemer, and he would work into his contracts that he would be the sole concessionaire at many of his shows. And that even tripped up some promoters because they were thinking concessionaire, well, sure, he can sell t-shirts and tapes and, stuff like that you commonly see. But no, Solomon wanted all the concessions. I just dripped my drink, oh my. Popcorn, food, hot dogs. He wanted it all. But many of the best and most interesting stories he would tell had to do with shows, concerts. One, for example, he and his band were touring the South. Then this was in the 60s, early 60s, I believe. And they were in Mississippi in some, backwoods rural town. When Solomon Burke and his band arrived, they were greeted with like this giant picnic. All kinds of people, all African-American people, were there with food, with, whole pigs roasting and pork and barbecue and sides of beef and cakes and pies and just all kinds of food. And so the band and Solomon were like, oh, this is great. We're, people want us here and they're treating us really, really, really well. Well, later, a white sheriff comes up to Solomon Burke and he says, well, my name's on the contract and I have to give you this. Kind of the way he's saying that, I have to give you this. And what that was $7,500 in cash for the show. Well, Solomon was thinking, okay, I'm getting my money before I go on stage. That's the way I like it. But then the sheriff starts filling him in about the schedule. The sheriff says you need to be ready to go on at 8:15 and be prompt about it. There will be lights on. You won't be able to see much. You won't be able to see the crowd. After the show, you take down everything as fast as you can, and then we will escort you out to the highway so you can be on your way to your next show. Well, again, Solomon is thinking, this is okay, this is good. We've got another show that we've got to get to, in fact, to play that same night. So, he wasn't too concerned about these arrangements at that moment. So, 8:15 comes, it's dark outside. The band is starting to warm up and play, and then roughly about 8:45, Solomon comes out, and it's dark, and there's bright lights shining on him, so he can't really see the crowd, but he's starting to work the crowd, like he always does, always says, "Are you with me? Are you with me?" And so he's working that crowd, and he's peering out there trying to see, how big the crowd was, because at the picnic earlier, there was a lot of people, so he was hoping for a good turnout. Well, Solomon starts to see these other lights that are moving way off in the distance. And the lights are starting to get closer and closer and closer, and he's still singing, still trying to work up the crowd. And then he sees that the lights aren't like, floodlights, they're torches. And then he begins to see the crowd of people dressed in white sheets with hoods over their head. The children were dressed in white sheets with hoods over their head. Solomon and the band realized that they were now performing for a Ku Klux Klan rally. The band members were scared shitless, but they made it through their show. They weren't very animated about their playing, but they made it through the show. And after about 45 minutes on stage, show was over. They started packing up. Well, they didn't even really pack it. They just picked up their equipment all in one piece and hauled it off to the truck. The drummer, instead of tearing down his drum set, just picked up the whole set and took it, to the van or the trucks or whatever they were using to get to the next show. Amplifiers and guitars and everything all at once. There was no taking down the stage. They just got the hell out of there. And sure enough, the sheriff escorted them to the highway, and they were on their way to their next show. Can you imagine that? And the way he would tell that story, you can read about it in that book, Sweet Soul Music. But just incredible. Now, Solomon Burke was known as the Bishop of Soul, also known as the King of Rock and Soul. And he was very serious about that title. He even had a crown. He had a cape. He had a big carpet that they would roll out on the stage as if he were a true king of royalty. As he would come out and sing and preach, he would do some preaching in the style of soul music, while he was on stage. There was someone else who also thought they were the king of soul. That was a person by the name of James Brown. Now, I don't know when this happened, but there was this, sort of this friction, this rivalry between James Brown and Solomon Burke. But on one occasion, Solomon Burke was booked to be an opening act at a James Brown concert in Chicago. So, Solomon, when he would talk to others, he would never speak badly or harshly about James Brown, but at the same time, he made it clear that they didn't necessarily see eye to eye. So he's in Chicago and they're preparing for the show when some, member of Brown's entourage shows up and speaks to Solomon Burke. And he says, hey, you got your crown? You got your crown? And Solomon says, yeah. And says, yeah, good. Bring it with you, be wearing it. And then he would come back a little bit later. So you got your cape? Yeah, I got my cape. Okay, good. Be wearing it. And then he would come back later and then say, hey, you got your carpet, your royal carpet? And Solomon Burke said, yeah, I got it. He said, good, have it with you. Okay, you're going to be going on in 5 minutes. But Solomon Burke, as was evidenced in the previous story, he wants to get paid before he goes on stage. And he was like, no, I ain't budging. All right, I'm not going anywhere until I get paid. My contract says I get paid before I go out there on stage. So that prompted James Brown to come in with a stack of money and says, here's your cash, throws it down on the table. I think he got, did I even write it down? No, I didn't write it down how much money he was going to get paid for that show. But then Brown tells him, you need to come out on stage in like 5 minutes, be ready. So Solomon Burke is there waiting in the wings, all right? And he sees that his carpet has been laid out on the stage. And he's thinking, oh, nice, someone put that out there for me. And so he's got his cape and his crown on, and then the announcer comes out and starts talking about this legendary king of soul, and he's thinking, okay, we're getting ready to introduce me. But then the announcer says, welcome everybody, James Brown. Solomon Burke was not amused. James Brown came out on stage and started dancing around on stage, doing his James Brown moves on top of Solomon Burke's royal carpet. And then that other guy that came to the dressing room before comes down and speaks to Solomon Burke and says, hey, we want you to go on stage now and take off your crown and put it on Mr. Brown. Solomon Burke says, no, that ain't gonna happen. No way. So it turned out they wouldn't let them play at all. He got paid like he wanted, before going on stage, but he never was allowed to go on stage over this situation. So that was, his way of describing this rivalry between he and James Brown. So yeah, this is a good album to get. As I said, it's 2 live shows at the Apollo. I gotta double check here and make sure that I know. No. This was recorded in Washington D.C. This was recorded in Washington D.C. at the Phoenix Club, actually in 1981. So not that old, but he's still been in business and producing great stuff. And like I say, if you don't have any Solomon Burke and you're not sure where you want to start, I do recommend this double album. It's great. 2 shows, and you're going to hear his great voice, and you're also going to hear how he works the crowd. And his famous line that he would say during shows, "Are you with me? Are you with me now?" So check it out. It's a very good album to start with. Check out down below. There will be a link to the first Random Pick Monday. Like the video, please. Subscribe and share the video if you care to. This would be really great for me. And always remember to enjoy your music.